think you had a well-deserved break there, but let me continue. There's so much to say about what transpired there with the speaker last. First of all, I'm saying that all the speaker is required to do, according to the Constitution, Article 184 of the Constitution, once the parliamentarians were sworn in, all he's required to do is to call a meeting of the members of the opposition for them to determine who will be the opposition leader. The speaker got there last night and talk a old crap of nonsense and just confirm, when they talk, I say when they talk, I love it. It just confirmed what many of us believe, that the reason why he did not call the meeting is because they don't want Azzuddin Mohammed to be the member, the leader of the opposition. Clear as crystal. He actually said so. He said so last night. But that's not Ewok. You talk about democracy, regardless of who the person is. You went through that process. You had election on the 1st of September. And Azzuddin Mohammed got the largest block of votes in the opposition. That is not for you, Mansour Nadir, to determine who must be the speaker. Even if he's a murderer or whatever it is, that is not for you. The Constitution does not give you that authority. All you have to do is summon the meeting, you chair the meeting, and they elect who they want to be as the leader of the opposition. That is what the Constitution says, right? So Nadir went there last night on NCN, and the man put on, he red dress, he got abused. So having said what he had to say, I'm going to go through some of the statements that he made last night. The man abused out the American, he abused out the Canadian, and he talk a whole set of crap. He talk, a scandal according to what a scandal about he think the last night. He got audience there, he got other thing. Here the man say, here somebody is along. For those of you who want to read it, it's in today's Starbrook News. And it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's long, but 7 pages, right? But I've highlighted certain parts that we need to understand. First of all, the headline is opposition leader to be elected Monday. That is what Nadir says. Rebuke diplomats, describe Mohammed as a fugitive. Now let me caution the politicians. Let me take the liberty of cautioning the politicians. I'm talking particularly about the politicians in the opposition and the Guyanese population, both in Guyana and abroad. Let me understand. The speaker made this announcement last night on NCN. And the speaker decides that this meeting is going to be kept on Monday, right? Monday at 10 a.m. Now, y'all forgive me for being a little suspicious and all that. Y'all forgive me. But if there's let's assume there's urgency to this thing. First of all, why he did not call it in November? They say he been out of the country, he came back. Then he went again, say he went, he not gonna mention anything, I'll go into it in detail. Why he didn't call it? So when you decide, or when you were instructed to have this meeting, or when you were pressured by the international community and all these people to have this meeting, why this meeting wasn't held today? Why this meeting wasn't held today? Why you have to wait until Monday for the meeting to be held? Folks, I believe mischief is afoot. Listen to me carefully, especially politicians, opposition member of parliament. I believe mischief is afoot. So look to see what's going to happen between now and Monday. Look to see what is going to happen between now and Monday, right? I am taking this thing at face value. These people are devious. They are devious. They are treacherous, right? But I'm talking about treachery. Imagine part of the pressure. Charan Das, who is likened to Judas Iscariot, that Bible character who betrayed Jesus. He came out yesterday with a statement. Criticizing Nadir for not calling Parliament. Joey Jagan, the son of the late President Chari Jagan and Janet Jagan, came out and he wrote something. Everybody, so maybe he feel pressured and he decided they're going to have the meeting. But the meeting is going to be held on Monday, right? Meeting is going to be held on Monday. And hear this. remember, they had already announced that the budget will be read on Monday. And I think normally one would expect a budget to be held at they'll start the reading, Parliament convene around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When Ashley Singh can go and read the budget there. A long, long budget, far longer than he is. Because he's one of them little man. And so 10 o'clock in the morning, the members of the opposition will have to assemble for this meeting. They don't know how long they're going to go. But then 2 o'clock the very day, you have the budget to be read. So what's going to happen there? I can't, do we expect that after the meeting at 10 o'clock, we don't know how long they're going to last, but the meeting just elect the members of the opposition, the leader of the opposition. We can't expect them for hours and hours and hours. So chances are, let me say lasted 2 hours. So from 10 to 12. So they have to stay for the afternoon sitting to hear the budget. That is what they're telling us. That is what they're telling those people now. This is what they're telling them. Right? So don't take anything at face value between now and Monday. Let's look to see what will happen, because I am saying, to me, it is extremely suspicious that this meeting wasn't called today. First of all, it wasn't called before, between November the 3rd and all this time. Right? So let me go into some of the things that his letter said. You hear what he says here. Right? And I remember you're reading this whole thing. He said, quote, I intended upon my return from representing our National Assembly and our country at the 28th Conference of Speakers of Presiding Officers of the Commonwealth to convene the meeting for the election of the leader of the opposition, regardless of how that vote will go. That's what Nadir saying last night. He had intended, when he come back, he been to India, New Delhi, to attend this meeting. So why wait till then? What happened between when the Parliament was first convened on the 3rd of November to when you come? What happened all this time? What happened all this time? What happened? So he makes that statement, but then he goes on and he says here again, he said, in the discharge of my constitutional duties, which rest solely within my purview, I have asked the Clerk of the National Assembly to convene a meeting of all the non-governmental members of Parliament for 10 a.m. on Monday, the 26th of January, 2026. And this is for this election of the leader of the opposition. Belatedly, you know, calling why you couldn't do it before? Why that could not be done? And let me say this, because he given the impression that it's only he could do it. Article 158(7) of the Constitution makes it clear that if the Speaker is out of the country, the Deputy Speaker can fill in to do all of this. The Deputy Speaker can fill in, right? So let me understand. Now let me go on. He said, Nadir, what he says here, Nadir said he hoped those participating in the process would be mindful of the height such an office holds and of the country's reputation. Nadir, is not your business. Manzoor Nadir, that is not your business. Again, he's saying that he hoped that the persons participating in the process would be mindful of the heights of such an office holds. That's what he said. And the country's reputation. What reputation? What reputation? As a corrupt country where all the gold smuggling and cocaine and tongue pass through? What reputation are you talking about? Let me go on. He said, quote, I trust that those involved in the process would be guided by the dignity of the House, the reputation of our country, and the sanctity of the responsibility that has been entrusted upon them by the electorate. What happened to the responsibility entrusted in you to be Speaker of the National Assembly and to call this meeting and to do other things? This is the man talk about dignity, the most undignified, because when you come to it, he said, in the most undignified manner, he attacked the American ambassador and the High Commissioner to Canada. And in the same breath, in the same release, he's talking about dignity. He's talking about dignity and sanctity of responsibility that has been entrusted upon them. What about the dignity and the sanctity of responsibility that was entrusted in you when you were elected Speaker of the National Assembly? Right? Then he goes on. Then the article goes on. Yesterday was the first time that Nadir had addressed the non-election of the leader of the opposition. It appears as if the process had been delayed in light of extradition proceedings that are currently underway against Mohammed. Correct. That is why it was delayed. Despite what they say, that is why it was delayed. Another excerpt here says, the quote in here, the positions expressed by some sections of the media, some diplomats and opposition members, which give the impression that the National Assembly has deliberately been inactive. They are false and an outright absurdity, end of quote, Nadir said. He said that the 13th Parliament, from the time it was convened on the 3rd of November, has been functional and has been in receipt of over 90 questions and 5 motions, which have been received by the clerk, analyzed, processed, and decisions communicated to the opposition members. That is not the point, Manju Nadir. That is not the point. The point is that you refuse to call the meeting to elect the leader of the opposition. That is the point. So when you come in to talk all them thing about the parliament active and the parliament receive 90 questions, that is not the point. I don't think anybody will dispute that. What we are saying, that is a requirement for a leader of the opposition, and you are the one who is constitutionally responsible for calling that meeting for that person to be elected, right? Let me move on to some of the other things he said. Here what they say, a significant portion of Nadir's address was devoted to a pointed rebuke of the international diplomatic community, particularly the United States Ambassador to Guyana, Nicole Thiroux, and Canadian High Commissioner Sebastian Sigoyen, both of whom had urged parliamentary normalcy. I know this blast from Nadir last night reminded me of Priya Manikchand and Gail Teixeira. Some years ago, when the U.S. ambassador had an activity to celebrate the independence of America, and they were invited. Priya Manikchand was, I think, carrying out the functions of Foreign Affairs Minister. She went in there, she abused him, she go home and then people talk about dignity and decorum and so on. She went into the U.S. ambassador's residence, right, on the East Coast there, and abused out, so much so that during our abuse out, other guests who were there, boo her openly, boo, 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 boo. And they talk about decorum and they talk about decency. They have none. They don't know what it is. So Nadir come last night and he calling out the British High Commissioner and the U.S. Ambassador. And hear what he says here. Quote, to the U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, I asked who is the leader of the opposition in your country. Nadir said. And the quote Nadir said. Quote again, does the absence of an opposition leader interfere with your country's democratic process? When I say this, I said, no, we can have a speaker of the National Assembly who don't understand the system. Opposition leader, she asking the U.S. ambassador, who is the leader of the opposition in the U.S.? The U.S. has a different system, and they have 2 main parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. They have independents too, but then they have what they call the minority leader. They have you have Hakeem Jeffries, old opposition there. And then you have Chuck Schumer, because they, unlike Guyana, where you have a unicameral legislature, America is a bicameral. You have the Senate, which is the upper house, the thing, and you have the House of Assembly, which is the lower house. Hakeem Jeffries is the leader, the Democratic leader in the lower house, and Chuck Schumer is the leader in the upper house, which is the Senate, right? So I don't know what Nadir asking here, but he look like he drink this Kool-Aid, or some people commenting. He drink the Kool-Aid and he gets stupidity like that. Well, not get stupidity. Because you say get stupidity, you're implying that at some stage he was sensible. But it appears as though you get more stupidity. Let me be grammatically correct. Grammatically correct. You get more stupid, right? To ask the U.S. ambassador who is the leader of the opposition of your country, and then does the absence of an opposition leader interfere with your country's democratic process? What nonsense is this? from a man who owes, and don't forget, because when you talk about the order of succession in Guyana, it is the president, the prime minister comes next, and I think the speaker of the National Assembly is number 3. So if God forbid and something happened to Irfan Ali and Mark Phillips at the same time, is Nadir is the speaker, is the president? I think that is the order, right? So the word Barrel Jagdeo in the line is the president, the prime minister, then the speaker of the National Assembly. That's the order of succession. And to have a man so close to the throne to ask this nonsenseness, right? It is very, very worrying. And then he goes on. Turning to Canada, Nadir said, to my dear friend from the Canadian High Commission, your great, great democracy took 6 months to produce a budget last year. And your country has the unique distinction of having a person who was never elected to Parliament serve as Prime Minister, a person imposed on the citizens of Canada by the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That is what, hello, Nadir, go back, reel back to 1999 and read how Barra Jagdeo became president. Read how Jagdeo became president. He became president through the manipulation of the Constitution. Let me remind you, well, reminding again, I got to be careful in the words I use, because if you're reminding somebody of something, you're assuming that the person knew in the first place and may have forgotten. So I don't know that he knew and forgot. So don't let me say remind. Let me tell you, Nadir, let me tell you that in 1999, Janet Jagan was the president. I think she won the election in 1997, right? All right. She then decided she was going to, let me make sure I get it right. She resigned, and then Sam Hines, who was the prime minister, became president, right? And Jagdeo was appointed as prime minister. Look at how the manipulation, Janet Jagan resigned. Sam Hines, as the prime minister, is automatic, became the president. He then appointed Jagdeo as prime minister. And then Sam Hines resigned, and therefore Jagdeo then became president. So you tell me, you talking about Canada and and people were what you said? But no person imposed on the citizens of Canada. Jagdeo wasn't voted for when he became president. He was imposed on the citizens of Guyana, right? He was imposed on the citizens of Guyana. So let me understand this thing clearly. Let me get more. Let me go on. That here he says here now. Here what is Nadir? And here let me tell you something. That man used to tease me, But my name, Slow, S-L-O-W-E. My surname. So when I introduced myself back in the day, I tell them my name is Paul Slow. And the Slow is spelled with an E. So members in the Rifle Association, my late great friend Neville and Darren and I'm thinking that Slow with an E. Right? That was a thing. And then sometimes you used to say Slow by name and nature. Right? That joke. Who know me know that I am slow by nature. Right? Why? When I check Nadir, the word Nadir, N-A-D-I-R, it means the bottom part, the lowest part. So that's what we have. The Nadir, the lowest part. Right? I just do my research, the lowest part. Well, let me continue to think because he got to get the little piece just now. Hear what he says. Hear what Nadir said last night in this broadcast. Hear what he said. Quote, we acknowledge with gratitude the work of the diplomatic community historically for the support of democracy in our country, a democracy which has been restored in 1992, and a democracy which has been strengthened, fortified, and continues to be developed, especially with the changes introduced by successive People's Progressive Party government. Now, dear, you serious? Right? Well, let me make a little correction because I think that Sam Hines resigned first. Yeah, I think there's it. Sam Hines resigned first and Jagdeo was appointed. Then Janet resigned. Thanks to the correction, student. Sam Hines resigned as prime minister and they appoint Jagdeo. And it's a lot, but the point is, he wasn't elected as the president. That is the point I am making. I might have gotten the sequence a little mixed up But the point is that Jagdeo was not elected as the president. So you talk about it. But he come here, we talk about the strength of democracy. 1992, here he says, for the support of the country, a democracy which has been restored in 1992. Well, let me go 1992. When Nadir been in 1992? In 1992, Mansour Nadir had his own political party, a party formed by Peter de Geer, named United Force. It named United Force. Then I think after Peter de Geer was with Marcellus Phelan Singh, and then Nadir took over the party. And they said the party was destroyed. So in 1992, when he's talking about the restoration of democracy, he was in the opposition. He had an opposition party. Well, no, not TUF, it was UF, United Force. And when Nadir took over the party, at some time thereafter, they changed it from UF to ZUF. Right? So it became TUF. Let me understand it clearly. That when Nadir took over that party, formed by Peter Stanislas de Geer, the same party that collated with the PNC to oust Jagan party back in the 60s, right? It was United Force. It had no Z in front. It was United Force. When Nadir was there, then it changed to the United Force. I know my civic lessons fairly well, right? Fairly well. So when Nadir talk about restoration under all this crap he talking, introduced under successive PPP government and all that, who started the process? The process started under Desmond Hoyt. When Desmond Hoyt with the Carter Center. Desmond Hoyt, president of Guyana from 1985 when Bonham died, when he took over. Right? That is when the old process of this reform and the talk about democracy started. Carter Center came, and Carter Center and Hoyt agreed to many changes. And let me tell you this one. There's a story that is told. Let our dear listener get belly walk. There's a story that is told. I think at the time, 1992 or sometime then, I think it's 1992. That's the first time they had counting at the place of poll. Y'all remember? As part of the reform. Nadir voted with family members at a particular polling place. Right? Listen to this carefully. This is what was related to us as senior police officers. He might vote at a particular polling place. I think he lived in Albastown area or sometime then. And counting of the place of poll. Counting of the place of poll. They said when the poll closed and the votes were counted, right? Let me give you a rough figure. Let me say that particular family had 5 members. They had less votes for that party at that particular polling place, and there was no spoil vote. So it means that they had Charandas since then. Right? So you come now and talk about democracy. You can talk about democracy, Nadir, and you are refusing to have that process undertaken. And you talk about democracy, right? Then hear what it says here now. That little bit, CC Bear, you chafed a little bit by. Somebody say you used to live in an Ark Street. Albastown. And he voted at some place there. And the polling place, when they come to the vote at the end, had less vote than his family members. And then have no spoil vote. So it means if you go to the logical conclusion, like people in the household didn't vote for you. Right? So you come in now and think. Right? Nadir has been looking for a place in the sun for a long time. United Force broke him up. Then I remember well, I told you all before, why he was the traffic chief, Nadir was the head of the Ayakar and Minibus Association. Yeah, looking for a place in the sun. He was the head of the Ayakar and Minibus Association. And when we had the issue with the tint, he was that association led the campaign against tint. They had a thing, they should go picket and think, we want we tint. And them young police under me used to tell them, we want we tint out. They used to put in the word out. And when we had to decide on the level of tint, Nadir and I worked together to put that proposal through. So I get a fairly good understanding of who he is. People say, you used to have a shaman and all that sort of thing. Well, I get some family relationship there. I ain't going into that now, right? When it come, let it come, man, let it come, right? Then it says Stabrook Hughes made several attempts to ascertain from Nadir when he would convene the meeting of the opposition MP. That's before last night. With the last response being, quote, I have no answers for you at this time, end of quote, before he disconnected the phone. So he's telling people now that he always intended to do this when he come back from India. But Stabrook Hughes is saying, I don't know when they call him, but at some stage they call him, and he said, I have no answer for you at this time. And he terminated, he disconnected the call. He disconnected the call. Then, they said during his address yesterday, Nadir made mention of protest action that was taking place outside his Eccles home. He also charged that Win Party members carry out surveillance and they've infringed upon his privacy and his family's privacy. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to the real world. You're a leader of you are the speaker, and you're making nice about people protesting and so on. That's part of the thing. Then he goes on to say, yeah, this is the part that got me even more riled up. Nadir said that part of the dilemma surrounding the election of the presumptive opposition leader, Mohammed, is that Mohammed is an international fugitive. So Nadir said Mohammed is an international fugitive. These people are ordinary dunce, you know. These people are ordinary dunce. Let me read to you what they say an international fugitive is. An international fugitive is a person wanted for a crime who flees their own country to escape justice, often hiding in another country to avoid arrest, prosecution, or incarceration, utilizing fake documents or aliases to cross border and finance their flight through further criminal acts. International bodies like Interpol help track down via red notices, which alert police worldwide, though apprehension relies on cooperation between countries and extradition treaties. So that is an international fugitive. So I tell you, he was an international fugitive. He drank from the same cup as Nandalal. He drank from the same cup, right? Nandalal refers to him as a fugitive offender. I think he doubled down last night on this fugitive thing. But read, even Charandas in a post, in a video last night, tell them what a fugitive, or who a fugitive is. Charandas, the same Charandas who brought down the coalition government, who went to India's ambassador and was kicked out. Get a lot of them around the place, you know. Many of them, they have no moral compass, none whatsoever. Right? Now that they get it and it break, they never had the compass. Right? Now, here what it says. He goes on to say, quote, I have found myself in this difficult position to hold the election of the leader of the opposition when I know that the presumptive leader of the opposition to be elected, Asudin Mohammed, is an international fugitive. Nadir saying, sir, that Asudin Mohammed is an international fugitive. An international fugitive who went to see him yesterday. An international fugitive who was outside of his home last night leading a protest. That is what he called a fugitive. An international fugitive who attends court in Guyana on every occasion he's required to do that. A man who is seen all over the place is an international fugitive. That's what Mandu Nadir said, following the same line of Nanlal. That is what it said. Right? Then he goes on to say, this is the article. While acknowledging the legal principle that a person is innocent until proven guilty, Nadir said that if a person is called to face charges, quote, a person's action should not be running away. If innocent, person should face the charges before them in a court of law. So when you're running away, you are equating challenging an extradition proceeding to running away. What wrong to this man is what he drink. what did Nadir consume? What he consumed was even lower than his name to make statements like that on the national television. This is not a man sit down in a rum shop and you get rum shop gaff, where the liquor get the better of you and you're talking stupidness. This is a man who went on national television to tell people this. You know, there's a saying. Let me tell you what they say. You know, they say I had a quote here, and I'm going to paraphrase. They say that it's better to keep your mouth shut and let people think of you as a fool than to open your mouth and conform it. That's paraphrasing. The thing they said was one of the presidents in the U.S., Lincoln, and someone of the poets said that it's better to keep your mouth shut and let people believe that you're a fool than to open your mouth and conform it. All what Nadir did last night was to open his mouth and confirm all that you were thinking. That the reason why he was not calling the meeting had to do with the fact that they didn't want Azzuddin Mohammed to be elected as the leader of the opposition. And then we talk about the man is a fugitive and so on, right? Then you think, no, not only that. As I said on on Monday, who country people, I can't get to them in countryman roots, you know. Say mouth shaped like batty, God will shoot shit. And the interpretation of that is that if your mouth is shaped like an anus, it has to defecate. And that's what we see happening a lot of places, a lot of times. For a speaker of the National Assembly, and people say the most unqualified person ever to get that position, Mansour Nadir, for be conforming that is not suitable for the position. Conforming. But once you're there with the PPP, what you expect? Not for them then unqualified for the position that they hold to. Right? And then here it goes on. Because here the man telling you that if you don't know of the presumption of innocence, you don't know of the rule of law, even if you're accused of something, you have a right, you're innocent until proven guilty. Or unless you're a police and the kid is a commissioner. So when you get certain things, you dismiss your right to read. There's no innocence until proven guilty. Right? Then he goes on to say here, if opposition members of parliament feel it morally right to elect an international fugitive, here he goes with that phrase again, then the stain on our parliament and our country rests solely with them. He said emphatically, I think that such a scenario would be unprecedented in Guyana's Westminster system. Hear what Nadir saying, like? Y'all share this life, man. Share this life. He said, if opposition members of parliament feel it morally right to elect an international fugitive, then the stain on our parliament and our country rests solely with them. Here the comment with stain on parliament again. Nonetheless, said the same thing. Parliament already stained. Let me say this. Let me remind them. See, please, bear with me. In the mood, bear with me. Let me remind Nadir that in 2020, right, when Irfan Ali was sworn in as president, he had 19 fraud charges pending. Those charges were dropped after, but at the time when he was sworn in as president, he had 19 fraud charges pending. So they jump in and tell you what, as we didn't get 11 rather, you have 11 indictments. Yeah, that is maybe so. American, someplace in Florida indicted 11. But when we president and Azzuddin is not to be president, is to be the speaker, not speaker, the opposition leader, right? Again, I say, Irfan Ali had 19 fraud charges against him. So I don't know what he's talking about. Nandalal had a book thief charge against him too. Ashni Singh had charge against him as well. So what is it that Nadir trying to say? And then he uses the word morally right. Nadir always morally right. You know, you talk about morally right, and you didn't know it would be morally right to call a meeting when it was to be called long before now. Right? You know that? I want to say this, Mr. Nadir. Similar to how you banned the word corruption in the last parliament, they should move a motion for the word moral and morality and the word to be banned from you speaking it. They should stop you from speaking, calling those words. right? Now, Nadir went further, invoking the name of Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar as an example of a notorious figure entering parliamentary life. He said Pablo Escobar went down the route of becoming an honorable, they say but an honorable member of parliament. Extortion, money laundering, terrorism, and trafficking were all associated with Pablo Escobar. What are you trying to say? What is he trying to say? Then he goes on. He also remarked that Escobar had also, listen to this carefully, he said that Escobar, quote, had also a darling in the press, and that he has been, end of quote, and that he has been carrying over the past few weeks a great burden as he read and watched. And, quote, I listened to the comments hurled at the staff of Parliament and the Speaker and being badgered by lies being spread by Stabrook News. Mark called out Stabrook News, end of quote. In response to the Speaker's statement, the editor-in-chief of Stabrook News, Anand Prasad, called on Nadir to provide evidence to substantiate his allegations. That will never be forthcoming. That is never going to be forthcoming. That evidence to substantiate that he was being badgered by other Stabrook News and so on. They can't face up to the reality and the truth. That is the problem with them. Y'all continue to share. Then the last part, well, let me read through this thing and then there are a couple more things I wanted to point out. The Speaker also cited nasty comments being spewed by Mohammed, quote, accusing me of corruption and many other things, end of quote. And that, quote again, I am not going to be intimidated by any backyard or front yard bully, end of quote. He said, quote again, no international fugitive, no wanted man or woman, nor the acolytes inside or outside of the house will face me. That is what he said. The international fugitive again, you referring to the thing. God send it to school, you know. God send it to school. Like learn the lesson and thing. Then he says here, it was later confirmed that Nadir was out of the country in November, but questions were raised about whether the Deputy Speaker could convene a meeting to elect the opposition leader. However, when asked by Stabrook News whether the Deputy Speaker could call such a meeting, Clerk of the National Assembly, Sherlock Isaacs, stated that, quote, listen to this, the Constitution states that the meeting must be convened by the Speaker of the National Assembly, end of quote. That is what Sherlock Isaacs, the Clerk of the National Assembly, said. But as I indicated to you, if you read Article 158(7) of the Constitution, it says that in the absence of the Speaker, if you're out of the country anyway, the Deputy Speaker can carry out the function. And if it is that they felt that this function was of such importance, the Deputy Speaker could have done it. But even before you get to the Deputy Speaker, Nadir could have done it the same day that the members were sworn in, as happened in the past, same day. Then they say, this is what the president said, when the president tell you, quote, Mr. Mohammed has no influence, has not influenced any government. Let me read it back. Mr. Mohammed has not influenced anything the government does in relation to Parliament or do our development agenda. This is what the president said. Yeah, the president had said to the opposition can elect whoever they want as opposition leader. That's their business. We have no business in the opposition election, whether they want, in the opposition elected whoever they want. Our only business is advancing our development agenda. Then they go on to say, finally, before I bring in Mr. Conway, notably, neither the government nor the ruling People's Progressive Party has called on Nadir to convene the meeting of the opposition MPs, and the government has not sought a meeting of Parliament since the ceremonial first sitting on November the 3rd, despite stating it has a busy legislative agenda. So, folks, that is what Nadir came out last night to tell people. But let me say this, as the last thing I read is saying, that notably the government nor the ruling People's Progressive Party has called on Nadir to convene a meeting of the opposition. I believe that they did just the opposite. They called him not to have the meeting. So I am saying that is my belief. I'm entitled to my view. And my view is that they called on him not to have the meeting, right? Not to have the meeting. As I say, other land. The deputy speaker, Richard, I can't remember the man's name, but he's one of the PPP member of parliament. He was elected on the same day as the deputy speaker of the Assembly. Can't remember his exact name, but you check it and see it. CC, come get a little batin, man. About land. And I need a water break. Yeah, go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. History will reveal that there are two things that the government would take note of and act: internal and external. If there are serious protests, they shut down the place internally. And when they have utterances influenced by the international community, we didn't have the protests as many people had expected, but the diplomats, call on the government to ensure, not directly, well, they got to be diplomatic, that a speaker, not a speaker, a leader of the opposition is selected. But government had Nadir. I listened to him, and the more I listened to him, the more I remember a word used by Dr. Roger Luncheon, a furial blast, when Manichan and them go and abuse down the U.S. ambassador at the residence. I remember that. And then we look at Nadir. Somebody called him a non-resident speaker. A non-resident speaker. He said that he was waiting until he returned from that conference in India before he would call the parliament for the election of a speaker, speaker, of a leader of the opposition. So many things, went wrong. Part of what he said that they received 90 motions, which it dealt with. Amazing, because the motions were submitted by the opposition people, and they had to get a say. They have to get discussions. They have to get confabulation. So receiving them doesn't mean to say that the parliament was active. No way that the opposition got to meet with the government and be able to put forward a point, argue the point there. But the more that they talk, the more, I wonder, or the more I'm saying that, as you mentioned, that is Nadir by name and nature. So many things you mentioned. Bring in Pablo Escobar. Talk about international fugitive. And blast down the members of the diplomatic corps. And there is like a law unto himself. When the thing was simple, Just call a meeting and get election of a speaker and deputy speaker. And get the leader of the opposition. But no, waiting and waiting and waiting till the 9th hour when they're under pressure. Is either you do it or you're under pressure. And it's called it. But then I'm suspicious of them, you know. I won't be surprised if there are some charandasses about the place. I won't be surprised if the chaos rip, although it is mineral, is flowing. I won't be surprised. You heard the president say he didn't know if the leader was in would be a he or a she. Something, according to what politicians say, something not regular. There's an air of uncertainty. There's an air of suspicion in place. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I don't trust Nadir. I don't trust him. And perhaps things in place. Things in place. Charandas, a lot of charandasses may be around. And the chaos rip, I say, although it is mineral, it is flowing.
Right, but let me say this. You know, the question was asked, who is the deputy speaker? See, one of the students answered, but the deputy speaker is Dr. Vishwa Mahadio, right? He was elected deputy speaker the same day when Nadir was elected speaker. He's a member of parliament for the government side, Dr. Vishwa Mahadio. And what CC was alluding to, you know, I said, between now and Monday, we got to check to see if Mr. Opel is going to be making a visit to Guyana. Jackie Opel, let me see if Carship can pass. We can't remember what the president said. Listen, let me remind you all.
The opposition leader will be a he or she. You're assuming that the opposition leader will be a he. I think that's a very big assumption. There might be a view that the opposition leader might be a he. But I can't say, I can't predict what will happen.
Let me interpret that. You saying that Azzuddin Mohammed will be the leader of the opposition? You know that it's Azzuddin Mohammed? That's a big presumption. It can be, but I'm not. That is what that is basically saying. So when you sit down and believe that whenever this meeting is called, now scheduled for Monday, 10 o'clock, that Azzuddin Mohammed will be elected as the leader of the opposition. Let us wait and see. Let us wait and see. They got, I believe, a lot of thing going on behind the scene. We had a man, and Toro and them by Ganoi. I used to use a lot of wrong word. They call it malappropriation, no? Right? And he would say maybe negotiations. He wouldn't say negotiations. He might say maybe negotiations are taking place. Maybe. So let me see. Let us see, because there are 29 members of the opposition. So therefore, it's 15 you got to get for vote for whoever you want to vote for, 15. The Win party has 16 seats, and the other party 12, and the other one get 1. So let me see what is going to happen. Hopefully by Monday this time, we're going to hear what transpires. But as I say, as I've said repeatedly, and I continue to say, don't trust these people. They are desperate. They are desperate. Things went pear-shaped with them when the magistrate granted Azzuddin Mohammed bail. I am convinced about that. Because had he not been granted bail, he would never been allowed to be sworn in as a member of parliament. And if you're not sworn in as a member of parliament, you can't be leader of the opposition. And if he was not sworn in on that day, Mansour Nadir showed you exactly. He would have never called any other meeting to swear in Azzuddin Mohammed. So if Azzuddin Mohammed didn't miss it on that day, the 3rd of November, he would have never been a member of parliament. But as I said, God is in charge. Asadin is a Muslim, they say Allah is in charge. Allah in charge.